back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, October 7th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to click on that Super Chat button in the chat to help create a Super Chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So, we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the overtime game between the Ravens and the Bengals. Might have been the game of the year. I know I said that about the Buccaneers and the Falcons, but now this game might have just taken that title. Unbelievable game yesterday, so we'll get into that. We'll talk about last night's Sunday night game between the Steelers and the Cowboys, which definitely wasn't as good as the Ravens-Bengals game, but did have some drama at the end, and we'll talk about it. Also, we'll get into the 49ers and their loss to the Cardinals, 24-23, get into that and talk about some concerns with the Niners. And then we'll get into the London game. We'll talk about the Vikings improving to 5-0 on the season with a 23-17 win over the Jets. And then in the final part of the show, we will preview tonight's game between the New Orleans Saints and the Kansas City Chiefs, standoff Week 5. So I hope everybody had a good weekend. I sure did. I was at the Yankee game on Saturday, and my voice is still a little it is still a little shot, but we're ready to go here, talk about some football. So anyways, let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Ravens-Bengals game. So Ravens coming off of that big win against the Bills last week. The Bengals, they picked up their first win against the Panthers, and nope, didn't want to do that. I don't know why I did that, but so this is the first time these two teams are going to meet, and let me tell you something. These two quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, they really showed out. Look at the numbers of these two quarterbacks yesterday. I mean, it was an unbelievable game. This is the best game that these two guys played against each other. The defense is not so much, but if you just look at these two quarterbacks' numbers, I mean, they were both unbelievable yesterday, and they both made great plays. Lamar Jackson late in the game. This was, I believe that this was the second touchdown to Isaiah Likely that he threw, but it was a bobbled snap, and the Ravens are still having issues with the offensive line, but there was a bobbled snap. Lamar picks it up, starts scrambling. Sam Hubbard's coming after him. Lamar stiff arms him to the ground. He's towards the sideline, and he throws it up to Likely in the end zone for a touchdown. I mean, that was one of the best plays of the day, just in general. But, both of these guys are spectacular. Unfortunately, for the Bengals, the way their defense is playing, we know the Ravens' defense is good. It's just, they were going up against a very good offense in the Bengals yesterday. But the Bengals, their margin for error is so tiny. They cannot make any mistakes. And unfortunately, Burrow threw an interception, and that was costly because, the Bengals are trying to ice the game, and, he throws a pick. He's trying to hit Chase, and I believe it got picked off by Marlon Humphrey. We'll go through the game summary, but that was costly. And, the Ravens ended up tying the game and sending it into overtime. So let's get into how this game unfolded. So the Ravens, on the very first drive of the game, they went right down the field. 6 minutes of time of possession. Lamar Jackson ran in a touchdown, but the play was reversed. He was just short. And then Derrick Henry from 1 yard out scored a touchdown. Bengals punted on their first drive. Ravens punted on their second drive. And then the Bengals, they went 10 plays, 86 yards down the field. And Joe Burrow connected with T. Higgins for an 11-yard touchdown. So that tied the game. Both teams again exchanged punts. Then the Ravens on their drive, they went up 14-7. Lamar Jackson connected with Rashad Bateman for a 16-yard touchdown on 3rd and 5 from the Bengals 16. Bengals punted. And then the Bengals got a safety. They tackled Derrick Henry in the end zone to make it 14-9. The Bengals did get the ball, didn't do anything with it. Ravens punted. Then the Bengals, they went ahead. 4 plays, 79 yards. A couple of big chunk plays to Jamar Chase, an 18-yard pass play, and then he connected with Chase for a 41-yard touchdown just before the end of the first half to make it 17-14. And then, the next 2 possessions for the Bengals, they scored touchdowns. They went up 24-14 to open up the second half. Burrow connected with JioSaavn for 39 yards, and then he connected with T. Higgins for a 5-yard touchdown from the Ravens 5 later in the drive. And then the Ravens, they answered with a touchdown. Lamar Jackson connected with Kohler for 55 yards, and then they got down to the Bengals 1, and Lamar scored by passing to Isaiah Likely for a 1-yard touchdown. And then the Bengals scored again. And this was, I believe, this was Chase Brown who had a good game. He had a 4-yard touchdown reception from Joe Burrow. So it was 31-21. And then, again, they just continued to exchange touchdowns. There still weren't any punts in the second half up until this point. So then the Ravens, they went down the field, 10 plays, 92 yards, some big chunk plays. Lamar Jackson connected with Mark Andrews for 27 yards, had an 18-yard run, 13-yard run again, connected with Zay Flowers for 13 yards, a lot of 13-yard gains. Another 13 yards to Mark Andrews later in the drive, and then he connected with Kohler for a 2-yard touchdown. So that made it 31-28. And then Bengals' next drive only lasted 1 play, and it was for 70 yards. Joe Burrow connected with Jamar Chase, and he did the rest. 70 yards to the house, 38-28 at that point. So at that point, I was like, okay, I think the Bengals got this one, right? Not the case. The Ravens, they answered, and this is what I was talking about. So there was a bobbled snap. This was at the Bengals 6. Lamar picks it up. He's scrambling. He stiff-arms Sam Hubbard, and he connects with Isaiah Likely for a 6-yard touchdown. It's an unbelievable play by Lamar. So that made it a 3-point game. And then Joe Burrow on 2nd and 15, he tries to connect with Jamar Chase, and yes, it was picked off by Marlon Humphrey. And the Ravens, they got into field goal range, which after that pick, I knew the Ravens were getting into field goal range. You just know. And that sent it to overtime. Well, actually, the Bengals did get the ball back, but they didn't do anything with it. So, yeah, we went to overtime. However, the Ravens fumbled. Another botched snap, and it was picked up by Pratt, and they brought it back. He runs it back to the Baltimore 38. And some interesting play calling, though. They just kept running the ball, the Bengals. And I'm sitting there going, why don't you pass it? T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are having good games. Why are you passing it? Or why are you not passing it? I guess because they didn't want to risk an interception. But then the Bengals ended up having a bobbled snap, and McPherson shanked the 53-yard field goal attempt. And the Ravens got into field goal range very easily because Derrick Henry, well, it looked like Derrick Henry was going to take it all the way for a touchdown, but he ended up getting down to the Bengals 6, a 51-yard run. And Justin Tucker from 24 yards out kicks a field goal, and the Ravens win the game, and they improved to 3-2 on the season. And Bengals dropped to 1-4. Lamar went 26 of 42. Well, you have the numbers up here, but let's go through the other numbers. So the Ravens ran the ball for 175 yards. Derrick Henry had a rushing touchdown, 92 yards on the ground. Lamar had 55 yards on the ground, Zay Flowers, 7 receptions for 111 yards. Charlie Kohler, the number 3 tight end, 3 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown. Rashad Bateman had 4 for 58 and a touchdown. Isaiah Likely, 3 receptions for 13 yards, but had 2 touchdowns. Ravens defense, Marlon Humphrey had the pick, of course, and they had 3 sacks of Joe Burrow in the game. Justin Tucker went 2 for 2 for field goals. And then for the Bengals, Chase Brown, 46 yards on the ground. Zach Moss, 24 yards on the ground. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were unbelievable. Jamar Chase had 10 receptions for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. T. Higgins had 9 for 83 and 2 touchdowns. Chase Brown had a receiving touchdown. And then for the Bengals defense, only 1 sack. And that was by Sam Hubbard. And McPherson went 0 for 1 on field goals, 4 for 4 on extra points. Yeah, for the Bengals, it's a tough loss. It really is. And, you look at all the games that they've lost this year, and, they could very easily, flip those and they could be wins, but that's not the case. That week 1 game against the Patriots was winnable. The Chiefs game, they were very close to winning that. The Commanders, that was back and forth. They just keep, I know they beat the Panthers by 10, but, you gave up 24 points to the Panthers. And I know Andy Dalton, has made that offense look better, but, look at what the Bears did to him yesterday. It's the big problem with the Bengals right now is their defense. That is what you could point it to. And, you could look at, and I was having some conversations about it yesterday, you could look at some of these teams in the past where they've had really good offenses, but they just can't stop anybody. Look at the years that Drew Brees didn't make the playoffs with the Saints. The offense was still solid. It's just the defense was atrocious. The Giants, who got a big win yesterday, same year, 2015, their offense was pretty good, but they had no defense whatsoever. That is what's happening right now with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is putting up big numbers almost every week. It's just the defense can't stop anything, and that's why I bring up the margin for error. It's so small. That interception was costly at the end of regulation. If the Bengals can ice it there, we're having a different conversation. But also, I think they should have been more aggressive in overtime. I think you try to, put the ball in Jamar Chase or T. Higgins' hands. They're both having good games. They both have 2 touchdowns. Again, Jamar Chase almost had 200 yards. He should have finished with 200 yards. You should have been looking for him. And they didn't do that. Because I guess they were, I don't know. I really don't know. Were they afraid that Burrow was going to throw another pick? I don't know. What's going on? But, yeah, it's not looking good right now. They're in last place. They're tied. Well, at least for them, they're tied with the Browns. And, they're... I think they're better than the Browns, honestly. The Browns, I think, should make a change of quarterback, but they're still sticking with Deshaun Watson. So I guess they're just going to continue to lose games. I think it is more than just Deshaun Watson, but still, he's not playing good. But Bengals are tied with the Browns, and the Ravens are tied with the Steelers now, 3-2. Both teams are. So the Ravens look like, they're getting it going, and, these last 2 weeks, it was different. Against the Bills, both defensively and offensively, it played well. This week, the defense got shredded, but you still won the game. So this is how good this Ravens team is. They could beat you in different ways, and Lamar Jackson played really well, both throwing it and running the football, and, of course, Derrick Henry makes a difference as well. They got the tight ends involved. So, you got to be happy if you're a Ravens fan. For the Bengals, you take on the Giants next week. So, we'll see what happens. But let me know what you guys think about this game. What were some of your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So, we are going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we will talk about the Steelers-Cowboys game from last night and what transpired there. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Cowboys-Steelers game, which also had an entertaining finish. Wasn't as entertaining as a game as what we just talked about with the Ravens and the Bengals, but, had its moments, so let's get into it. But actually, this game didn't start on time. There was about an hour and a half delay because of bad weather, because of lightning in the area. And this game did not start until about, I think, like 9:45 East Coast time. Like, it was interesting, and I stayed up to watch the entire game, and again had its moments. And let's kind of just get into it, how it all played out. So, the Cowboys got the ball to start the game, and they Kevontae Turpin had a good return, so the Cowboys had decent field position, and then the Cowboys got into field goal range and into Brandon Arbery's field goal range, and he hit a 55-yard field goal to make it 3-0. The Steelers then they answered on their first drive. Chris Boswell, who's also had a good year, 41-yard field goal to make it 3-3. Then both teams exchanged punts. The Cowboys then were driving, and they got down to the 11, and Dak Prescott got sacked, lost the ball. T.J. Watt and Herbig got the split sack there. It was recovered by Herbig, and the Steelers took over there. However, they punted. Then the Cowboys went 8 plays, 51 yards down the field, got down to the Steelers' 15-yard line, and Aubrey kicked a 33-yard field goal to make it 6-3. Steelers punted, and then this was interesting. So they got down to the Steelers' 15-yard line on their next drive, and there was some miscommunication with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and NBC showed them on the sideline. CeeDee Lamb was saying something to Dak. But yeah, Dak Prescott threw a pick to Dante Jackson. And it ended up being 6-3 Dallas at the half. And then the Steelers, they opened up. Nice drive, 6 plays, 72 yards down the field. Justin Fields connected with Connor Hayward for a 16-yard touchdown, so that made it 10-6. And then the Cowboys, they were driving. And the Steelers, they do a good job at this. They blocked Aubrey's field goal. So they took over, but they ended up punting. And then the Cowboys, they responded, put together a nice drive, 16 plays, 90 yards, 8.5 minutes of time possession down the field. And Dak Prescott connected with Rico Dowdle, who had a good game, a 22-yard touchdown. That made it 13-10. Then we went to the fourth quarter. Steelers punted. Dak threw another interception. This was deep to Jalen Tolbert. It was picked off by Joey Porter Jr. And the Steelers put together a drive after that. 12 plays, 63 yards, and Fields connected with Pat Freiermuth. And it was a little shuffle pass from 6 yards out to make it 17-13. But I was like, yep, there's still too much time left on the clock. And there was because the Cowboys went 50 plays, or 15 plays, 70 yards down the field, and they got it down to the Steelers' 4-yard line. And so they tried to. So they didn't get it on 1st and goal. Then 2nd and goal, Landon Roberts makes a nice play because Dowdle was trying to go over the pile, and Landon Roberts jumped into him, and the ball came out, and they pushed the Cowboys back to the 4 again, because before that Dak scrambled for 3 yards, and they were reviewing it to see if he scored, but he didn't. Knocks the ball out, but the Cowboys retained possession. Then there was an incompletion to Tolbert, and then Dak went right back to him on 4th and goal, and they scored a touchdown from 4 yards out. And the Steelers tried to block the extra point, but they could not. They got penalized a couple times, and if they were penalized again, then it would have been an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. So Cowboys ended up hitting the extra point. Steelers tried to do a bunch of laterals, and it just they ended up not getting the win there. They dropped to 3-2, and the Cowboys improved to 3-2 on the season. Dak Prescott, 29 of 42, 352 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Rico Dowdle, like I said, had a good game. 20 carries for 87 yards. He also had 2 receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown. And Jalen Tolbert was actually the leading receiver. 7 receptions for 87 yards and a touchdown. He stepped up. He actually got hurt in this game late, but was still able to make that touchdown, still get that touchdown. Jacob Ferguson, 6 receptions for 70 yards. CeeDee Lamb, 5 for 62. Like I said, Kevontae Turpin, 4 for 50 yards in this game. Dak had 3 turnovers, and they still won the game. And the Cowboys defense had 3 sacks. Justin Fields on a couple of plays was getting knocked around. And he only went 15 to 26. Actually, he got taken out of the game at one point. I forgot to mention that. So he got taken out of the game. Kyle Allen was put in, and, he got the Steelers in good position. He had 1 pass that was completed for 19 yards. But, Fields went 15 to 27, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Had 27 rushing yards in this game. Najee Harris had 42. They were missing Cordero Patterson and Jalen Warren in this game, so, they definitely missed them. The Steelers just trying to get that running game going. Najee Harris was actually their leading receiver, 2 receptions for 35 yards. Van Jefferson had 3 for 26. George Pickens, 3 for 26. Connor Hayward, 2 for 23. Pat Fryermuth, 3 for 22. Not impressive throwing the ball through the air, but it was a slugfest, this game. So you would like to see. I mean, last week the Steelers did open up the passing game, but here I thought they'd be able to move the ball against the Cowboys defense, but they really weren't, especially because the Cowboys were missing Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. But it didn't matter. But TJ Watt, once again, a one-man wrecking crew, a forced fumble, 1.5 sacks in this game. But it was not enough. And they definitely do miss Alex Highsmith. They really do miss Alex Highsmith. Because now, when you take him out, and now they could just focus their attention on TJ Watt. But having said that, TJ Watt still made his fair share of plays because he's an absolute stud. But for the Cowboys, it's a good win. I mean, am I overly impressed? Not necessarily, because again, Dak, turned the ball over. Rico Dowdle made plays, so that's at least something encouraging going forward. I know some people are kind of mocking Mike McCarthy because, of what he said recently about the running back room and why Dalvin Cook hasn't been elevated. He's like, guys really haven't gotten an opportunity when talking about Dowdle and Zeke. Well, I mean, Dowdle, at least showed that, he could do some damage. But I think you need somebody that complements him, and I don't think Zeke is that option. So I think maybe you see if you could bring Dalvin Cook in and, see if he can complement Dowdle. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But again, I have him in one of my fantasy leagues, one of my dynasty leagues. So I'm kind of hoping that he gets elevated just so, we can see what he does. But, Dowdle at least, had a good game. And, you got other contributions from some of these other receivers that are going to have to step up because Brandon Cooks is on IR, and Michael Gallup was that third option, but he's not there anymore. So, you got guys like Turpin and Jalen Tolbert, who they believe in, that stepped up and made big plays. So that's at least something encouraging going forward for the Cowboys, that you got other contributions besides CeeDee Lamb. Now, it doesn't seem like Dak and CeeDee are on the same page, and that could be because, CeeDee Lamb wanted his new contract and missed some time. So you could point to that, but they're going to get it going. And it's not like they haven't done anything this year. I mean, CeeDee Lamb has scored touchdowns this year. Didn't have one in this game, but, scored that touchdown against the Giants last week. Had that touchdown against the Ravens. So CeeDee Lamb and Dak, I'm not worried about that connection. That's the one thing you can rely upon. But last night, that was not the case. It was other guys stepping up. So, so, I mean, again, I wasn't overly impressed. I mean, I guess also the fact that they have a ton of injuries on defense and they were still able to get this win, I guess you could point to that as a positive as well. Well, it's definitely a positive, but again, I wasn't overly impressed by it. There's still some things they gotta clean up and they gotta get healthy. And then as for the Steelers, the defense struggled once again. Not as much as last week against the Colts, but they still gave up some big plays, and again, TJ Watt was a one-man wrecking crew, but you need some other guys to step up, to get after the quarterback. That's really the thing, is to get after Dak, and they just really couldn't do it at times. But they got 3 turnovers off of the Cowboys, off of Dak, and you would think if you win the turnover battle that you would win the game, but that was not the case here. The offense, I mean, there are some limitations with the offense. I mean, you saw them open it up against the Colts, so you thought, okay, maybe it's going to continue here, especially, the Cowboys are a defense that has struggled, but that didn't happen. Justin Fields didn't throw for 200 yards. George Pickens is frustrated, and I'm seeing that. They got to get these pass catchers more involved. They got to get this running game going. I mean, they're dealing with injuries up front on the offensive line, which is not good. And then also you got guys injured in the backfield. So hopefully you get those, some of those guys back. But that's a team that I think needs to make a trade for another receiver. Because, outside of George Pickens, Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, who has made plays, they need to get somebody else in there. Roman Wilson, who they drafted out of Michigan, he was still a healthy scratch. So, we'll see, eventually when he makes his debut, maybe he can help. But the Steelers have to trade for another receiver. Right now, they're still in a good spot, but now the Ravens and them are tied for first place in the division. So, and they got the Raiders next week, who are coming off of a loss to the Broncos. And that's a home game for the Raiders. But, the Steelers won there last year. So, we'll see what happens in that game. And then for the Cowboys, I believe, let's see, who are they playing next week? The Cowboys are taking on the Lions. That is a big game. That is a big game next week. So, we'll see how that goes. But, Cowboys get the best of the Steelers, 20-17. Let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to click on the Super Chat button in the chat to help create a Super Chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it. And it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day. So any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And then also the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will get into talking about the 49ers falling to the Cardinals, a division rival, 24-23. And I'll talk about some concerns I have with the Niners going forward. So we'll talk about that when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Cardinals and their win over the 49ers. So I did take them with the points in my spread pool. But, of course, I didn't expect them to win this game. I was leaning 49ers. I thought this game was going to be competitive, and it was. The 49ers, they were up by as much as... What were they up by as much as? They were up, they were up 20-10. Well, 23-10. And at that point, I was like, all right, the 49ers, they should win this game. But that didn't happen. That did not happen. And this game got off to a fast start because the Niners, they went 3 and out. And then the Cardinals, their drive lasted 2 plays. Kyler Murray, 22 yards to Trey McBride. Good to have him back. He's a big weapon for that offense. And then Murray, a 50-yard touchdown run. So that made it 7-0 Cardinals. The Niners, they responded. Brandon Ayuk had a big game. First play of their next drive, Purdy connects with Ayuk for 53 yards. They get it down to the Cardinals' 10, and Jake Moody kicks a 28-yard field goal to make it 7-3. Cardinals then punted, and then the Niners responded again, a 13-play, 76-yard drive down the field, and Purdy connected with George Kittle for a 4-yard touchdown to make it 10-7. And then the Cardinals put together a drive that resulted in a field goal by Ryland for 30 yards. So that made it 10-10. And then the Niners answered another field goal drive, Jake Moody from 20 yards out. So that made it 13-10. Cardinals were driving. Murray connected with Michael Wilson for 34 yards. They got down to the Niners 27, and their field goal got blocked and returned for a touchdown by Lenore to make it 20-10. And then Kyler Murray threw a pick. It was intended for James Conner, but it ended up getting picked off by Nick Bosa, and he returned it for 30 yards. And Jake Moody actually got hurt in the game, so they had Wisnowski kick a 26-yard field goal. So that made it 23-10. So at that point, I thought, okay, the Niners should win this game. But you see the final score, right? The Niners did not score again. They got shut out in the second half by this Cardinals defense. So the Cardinals punted to start off the second half. An interception by Purdy, which was intended for Kittle. So he gets picked off, turns into a field goal. Ryland kicks a 42-yard field goal, so that made it 23-13. The Niners then are driving, and yeah, they ended up having to go for it because they don't have a field goal kicker. They went for it on 4th and 23. So they ended up turning it over on downs. The Cardinals end up scoring a touchdown on their next drive. Kyler Murray connects with Higgins, the other tight end, for a 2-yard touchdown. They went for 2. They got it with James Conner, so that made it 23-21. Then the Niners fumbled. Jordan Mason, he ends up fumbling. Cardinals recover it, and they turn that into a field goal to make it 24-23. Ryland a 35-yard field goal. And then Brock Purdy tries to put together a drive, and he ends up getting intercepted. Got tipped. I guess it got... I forget if he got hit and it got picked off. But either way, he threw a pick trying to hit Ayuk, and the Cardinals ended up winning the game. So part of the reason why the Niners lost is because Jake Moody got hurt. But, there's something off with the Niners. And, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they're in jeopardy of missing the playoffs. No, this is still going to be a playoff team because there's too much talent, and I just can't see them missing it. And you look at the division, the Seahawks, they've lost 2 straight games now. The Cardinals are 2-3. You're 2-3. The Rams, they only got 1 win on the season, which is against the Niners, but still. The Niners, it's right in front of them. But, there are some concerns here. And it's not, the offense was a little bit of a concern yesterday just because, Purdy threw a couple of picks. Jordan Mason fumbled. Purdy went 19-35 for 244 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Niners ran the ball good, 153 yards in total. Jordan Mason, another nice game, 14 carries for 89 yards. You got Brandon Ayuk going, which is a positive. However, Deebo Samuel only 1 catch for 11 yards. I know he missed a game, but, you got to get him more involved. George Kittle had a good game, 8 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown. Juwan Jennings only had 1 for 13. The Niners' defense, only 1 sack. They do struggle with mobile quarterbacks at times. Look at what Kyler Murray did, a 50-yard touchdown run. So, losing Jake Moody, that definitely changed some things there. Because, if they end up kicking that field goal with Jake Moody, then we might be having a different conversation here. And Kyler went 19-30 for 195 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. The Cardinals, between James Conner and Kyler Murray, they're only the 2 guys that had rushing attempts in this game. James Conner had 86 yards on the ground, and Kyler Murray had 83 yards on the ground with a rushing touchdown. That's something, again, the Niners struggled stopping the run last year in the playoffs. They struggled in this game. And then, you look at the passing stats. Michael Wilson, 5 receptions for 78 yards. Trey McBride, 6 for 53. Marvin Harrison Jr., 2 for 36. James Conner, 2 for 14. Cardinals defense had 2 sacks in this game. Ryland, 3 for 4 on field goals. One of them was blocked, of course, for a touchdown. Yeah, you take away that blocked touchdown, and then, the Niners only have 16 points. They scored only 1 offensive touchdown and then a bunch of field goals. So, the defense, I'm more concerned about the defense than I am with the offense. But, something's off with them. Something is off with the Niners. And, next week this week now, upcoming on Thursday, they take on the Seahawks on a short week, coming off of back-to-back losses against the Lions and now against the Giants. Then they take on the Chiefs. They take on the Cowboys at home. Then they go into the bye week 9. Then they're at Tampa, home against Seattle, at Green Bay, at Buffalo, home against the Bears, home against the Rams, at the Dolphins, which Tua could be back by then, home against the Lions, and then at the Cardinals. It's a tough schedule. It is a very, very tough schedule. And there is some good news that they might be getting Christian McCaffrey back within the next couple of weeks, which would be nice. Again, it's so weird, the different things you hear about McCaffrey. He's going to be out for a while. Now he's going to be back in a couple weeks. It's a lot of mixed signals that we're getting with McCaffrey. But if the Niners could get him back, that's a huge boost. But Jordan Mason has done a nice job. It's not like they're not able to run the football at all and they're one-dimensional. But McCaffrey does add another dimension to this offense that, it's missing something. But, they should be able to beat the Cardinals at home. And they weren't able to do that. Now, I don't think the Cardinals, a lot of people have said this, and I agree with it. The Cardinals we're not going to be a pushover going into this year. I didn't have them winning a ton of games. But, they're not a pushover, and they have talent on this team. Now, they still won this game without, Marvin Harrison Jr. going off, and Kyler didn't throw for a ton of yards, but they won this game by running the football and cashing in on mistakes by the Niners. I mean, and their defense shut the Niners down in the second half. Niners didn't score. Now, they probably would have if, they had a field goal kicker, because they would have had at least 3 points, but you gotta give the Cardinals a lot of credit here. Did not expect them to win this game. I expected it to be close. I expected it to be competitive, but I mean, especially when they're down 13, I didn't think they were going to come back. So, yeah, the Niners, they're looking to find it right now, and I think they eventually will, because again, this is what happened last year, and they were able to find it, and they got hot, and they rode that all the way to the Super Bowl. Now, I don't have them in the Super Bowl this year, but I still think they're making the playoffs. So, but that schedule, it's tough. It is a tough schedule. So, we'll see what happens. But, give the Cardinals credit. They got the win. They take on the Packers now in Green Bay next week. And like I said, the Niners on a short week, they take on the Seahawks on Thursday, which is a big game for both teams. Because the Seahawks are going to be really desperate because they're coming off of 2 straight losses. And, the Niners, they're looking to find it. They're looking to find that consistency because they just right now don't have it. But, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Again, another interesting game, to say the least. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the game in London that got us started off on Sunday yesterday. Between the Vikings and the Jets, we'll talk about that game. We'll talk about Aaron Rodgers' performance, all that good stuff when we come back, even though, his performance is not great. It was better in the second half, but still was not good. Was a forgettable game, a very forgettable game for the Jets. At least the Jets starting quarterback. But yeah, I mean, we'll get into all of it when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we will now get into talking about the Vikings and the Jets over in London. The second, because I know on Friday I said the first, but the second, but I corrected myself, but the second international game of the season. And, yeah, it was, again, I'm going to use the word interesting, because the Vikings, they were up 17-0 at one point. And it was not looking good for the Jets. But, to give the Jets credit, they played, or at least some credit, they were able to come back, make the game closer, and they had an opportunity to win the game. But unfortunately, they came up short. So let's kind of go through it. So the Jets, they opened up the game. They went 3-and-out. Vikings then took the ball. They went 11 plays, 52 yards down the field, and they were able to get a field goal to make it 3-0. Jets then punted, another 3-and-out. However, then the Vikings fumbled. They end up fumbling. Quinnen Williams ended up recovering the fumble, or Quincy Williams, one of the Williams brothers, recovered it. It was Quincy Williams. It was Quincy Williams. Because when I'm looking at it on CBS, it has Q.I. Williams, and they don't have the full name written out. But yeah, so it was Quincy Williams that recovered the fumble. And actually, Sam Darnold got hurt, but he did come back into the game. But anyways, because Nick Mullins came in for a bit, completed a pass, and then Darnold was able to come back in. But yeah, so that was good for the Jets. But then, Aaron Rodgers, and this is one thing that I just don't like is those quick throws. I don't like them, even though again sometimes they do work, but for the most part I just don't like them. And Rodgers tries again with that quick throw, and it gets intercepted by Van Ginkel, who returns it 63 yards for a touchdown to make it 10-0. And that is something that we are not accustomed to seeing Aaron Rodgers do, and that is throw interceptions. Or not even interceptions, but, interceptions, but also, more specifically, pick sixes. We really don't see that. That does not happen often. I know it's happened once before. I'm trying to think if there was another time. But yeah, Rodgers does not throw pick sixes. But yeah, Van Ginkel, and they brought it up, he's picked off both New York quarterbacks. So if the Vikings and Josh Allen meet in the Super Bowl, Van Ginkel's going to have to try to pick off Josh Allen if they play the Bills in the Super Bowl. But anyways, so yeah, it was 10-0. And then on the next drive, actually, Rodgers did throw. Now that I remember, I think it was against the Bucs during the COVID season. That was another pick six. Because he actually almost threw back-to-back pick sixes in that game. So yeah, Rodgers has thrown, I think, 3 pick sixes in his career. Okay. So now on the next drive, he did this against the Bucs that year too. He threw back-to-back interceptions in this game. And this one was an overthrow. Him and Allen Lazard just not on the same page. Rodgers overthrows him, gets picked off by Bynum. And thankfully, the Jets defense held, and the Vikings went for it on 4th and 2. They didn't get it. So they turned it over on downs, and no harm, no foul there. Then the Jets were going for it. Rodgers connected with Tyler Conklin for 25 yards. They got down to the Vikings 26. They went for it on 4th and 2, and they got stuffed. They ran it with Braylon Allen. He didn't get it. And you know what? It is interesting because it is a 10-0 game. I think you take the points there, right? You make it a one-score game. But because then later in the game, you could have been going for 3 instead of 7 to at least tie it. But then the Vikings, they turned that into a touchdown drive. Darnold connected with Justin Jefferson for 27 yards, connected with Myles Gaskin for 11 yards. Aaron Jones actually got hurt in this game. He left with a hip injury, so we'll keep an eye on that throughout the week. But yeah, more penalties on the Jets. A defensive pass interference call on the Jets, and then another one. And then, then there was an illegal formation on the Vikings that set them back because they were at the Jets too. But then there was a defensive holding, and then C.J. Ham from 2 yards out scores a touchdown to make it 17-0 at that point. However, the Jets did score a touchdown before the end of the first half. Rodgers connected with Allen Lazard for a 14-yard touchdown. So, I mean, it really should have been 17-10. If the Jets would have kicked that field goal, but they didn't do that. And then in the second half, both teams exchanged punts. Greg Zuerlein kicked a 32-yard field goal to make it 17-10. Vikings punted, Jets punted. We go to the fourth quarter. Vikings get another field goal, a 53-yard field goal, and it was a 10-point game. Then Darnold threw a pick. Jets turned that into a touchdown. Rodgers connected with Garrett Wilson for a 1-yard touchdown. And then the Vikings, they responded. They were able to get some points, a 41-yard field goal. So the Jets had to go down the field and score. And Rodgers connected with Garrett Wilson for 16 yards, Allen Lazard for 7, Lazard again for 6, Garrett Wilson for 9, Breece Hall, 6-yard run. They got down to the Vikings 26, but Rodgers was trying to hit Mike Williams, and he ended up getting intercepted by Stephon Gilmore, and that was the end of the game. And that was Rodgers' third pick of the game, and that does not happen often. Rodgers is not a guy that turns the ball over like that. He's usually good at taking care of the football, but not yesterday. As you can see, this is his full stat line, 244, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. But the other thing, too, is this offensive line is going to get him hurt. Because, again, he got crushed on one play, and, he was down for a little bit, and he started grabbing his leg, and I'm like, oh, no, don't tell me he did it again. But, he was able to get off, and actually, and even before that, actually, no, or maybe it was that same possession, but then, the Vikings turned the ball over, and he ran back out on the field. I think it was during that sequence. But, yeah, it was just an ugly day. And again, the offensive line, like I said, is going to get him hurt. And now he's got a low ankle sprain. So they got to do a better job of protecting him. And this is what I was worried about going into this game, because the Vikings have a very good defense. They got after Rodgers. They did. They got 4 sacks, but they pressured him. Yeah, it was just not a good day for the Jets quarterback. And the defense actually, kept them in the game. They made stops. They created some turnovers, but it just was not enough. It was not enough. The Jets offense just really couldn't. They're still not quite there yet. And I feel like at some point it's going to click. We saw against the Patriots it did click. But it's just the consistency is not there. And another thing, too, is Breece Hall, 9 carries for 23 yards. Braylon Allen, 5 carries for 13 yards. They can't run the ball. And, people are looking around and saying, where's Breece Hall? Where's this running game? Braylon Allen right now looks like the better running back. And this is unbelievable. I didn't realize this. Garrett Wilson was targeted 22 times in this game. 13 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Conklin, 6 for 55. Alan Lazard, 4 for 34 and a touchdown. Drops were a problem in this game. Lazard dropped a couple of passes. But yeah, it's just, right now it's not looking good for the Jets. And you look at their schedule coming up. You got the Bills, the Steelers, the Patriots in Foxborough, which I think they should win. But, at the Steelers is not going to be easy. But it's winnable. Watching the Steelers last night, it's definitely a winnable game for them. The Bills, I think it's a winnable game, even though the Bills are coming in after 2 straight losses. They're looking for a win. Both teams are going to be desperate. That's the game next Monday night. But yeah, at the Steelers, then at the Patriots, home against the Texans, at the Cardinals, home against the Colts, bye week. Seahawks, you're going to see Tua twice. You got the Rams and the Bills. There's some tough games there. But, other than the 49ers game, the Jets, you could very easily look at them and say that they should be 4-1. You can. Because the Broncos game, that's a game they could have won. And yesterday they could have won that game, had they not played that first half. But, right, I look at these games, the Jets, they just beat themselves. And you know what that falls on? Once again, it's the coaching. This team, until you get a legitimate head coach in here, this team is not going to win anything. And I'm talking about playoffs. But they got to get to the playoffs first. And look, this is something that I know, I'm going to say that when I talked about this before the beginning of the year, and I said I'm going to go towards that storm because I know that there are a lot of that the Jets have a lot of talent, but they still have issues, particularly with coaching. This is what's going to hold them back, and it's holding them back. Robert Saleh is not getting it done. But, it's more than just that. Rodgers doing something uncharacteristic, something that he doesn't do. That's uncharacteristic of him, is turning the ball over. 3 interceptions. That does not happen. So they got to figure it out. And, if they go out and try to get Devontae Adams, that's going to help. But I think it's more than just that. The offensive line is an issue. Because if he takes, all it's going to take is one hit, and he could be done. So they really got to figure it out. Morgan Moses, one of their tackles is out. Tyron Smith isn't really having a great year. But I was saying, like, you go back to the Niners game, and they were protecting him. He wasn't getting hit. Now, I know the 49ers, like, ran all over the defense. But, they were doing a good job at, limiting the amount of hits on him. So, I don't know. It's not looking good right now for the Jets. But you know what? It is still a long year, and it's not like they got no shot. I mean, look at the division. The Bills lost 2 straight. The Patriots, they're not going anywhere this year. The Dolphins got their quarterback issues, even though they picked up a win yesterday against the Patriots, even though that game was ugly. This division is still winnable. The Jets' season by no means is over. This team still has a chance to do something, but there's things that I don't think they can fix, and one of them is the head coach, and they're not gonna fire him in this during the year. It's not gonna happen. So I don't know, but the Vikings are a very good team, but they held Sam Darnold down. Sam Darnold did not have a good game. Had an interception. He was not good. So, credit the Jets defense for at least keeping them in the game, but they got to put together a game where both sides of the ball, are clicking at the same time. And could that be against the Bills on Monday? Because let me tell you something. The Bills, they got off to that great start, but, you look at the opponents that they played against, and now look at who they've played against the last 2 weeks. You could kind of look at the Bills and say, yeah, a little bit fraudulent. Still a good team, but not as good as we may have thought. So, all right. But let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our final break. When we come back, we'll talk about the game tonight between the Saints and the Chiefs, and that will wrap it all up for today. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we're now going to get into talking about the game tonight that will end off Week 5 between the New Orleans Saints and the Kansas City Chiefs. So let's get into that matchup. So the Saints, they got off to a good start, very good start. They were blowing the Cowboys out and the Panthers in Week 1. And we were like, man, are the Saints legit? Now, they could still be legit. This NFC South that they play in is by no means out of reach for them after, dropping these last 2 games. They got a big game with the Bucs coming up after this week. So they're looking to get back in the win column. And then, as for the Chiefs, they're 4-0, but it's not like you look at them and you say, how is this team 4-0 if you watched all the games? They could very easily have, a couple losses in there. I mean, all their games are one-score games. They lose to the Chargers. Or no, they lose to the Chargers. They beat the Chargers 17-10. They beat the Falcons the week before that. That was a 5-point game. They beat the Bengals. That was a 1-point game. And then the Ravens, they almost scored a touchdown, and then we're going to go for 2 to potentially win the game. So, the Chiefs, at the very least, should have at least one loss. But they don't. They are undefeated, but they do have issues. Patrick Mahomes is turning the ball over. They have injuries both at the running back position and the receiver position. So, again, last year, what did we say? Oh, this is not going to be the year. The offense is struggling. Receivers are dropping passes. It's just, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. What happened? The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So I'm not going to sit here, and they're 4-0 right now. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, yeah, no, it's definitely not going to be the year. Now, it's possible that a team knocks them off. Got to see who it is. But, again, this is what happened last year. So I'm not falling for it twice, all right? Even though, again, they could lose. They could lose down the line, and then they don't three-peat. But, anyways, so going into this game, it's at home. I think the Chiefs should win this game. Derek Carr does know this team well from all his years playing in the AFC West. But it's a hostile environment, and I think the Saints, they're a veteran team. They're up for the challenge, but I think the Chiefs should win. Looking at the league rankings for these teams, I can pull this game up here. So the weather's supposed to be nice, which is good. And it was originally a 7.5-point spread. It went down to 5.5. I actually did take the Saints with the 5.5, but I do think the Chiefs should still win. But what's going to happen, right? The Chiefs are going to cover. So, the Chiefs 18th in passing yards per game at 226. The Saints are 23rd with 206. The Saints are 7th in rushing yards per game, 147.5. And the Chiefs are 17th, 112.5. The Saints offense is still first in points per game, and the Chiefs are 15th. Saints are scoring an average of 31.8. Now, I don't think they are going to get to 31, but I do think the Saints are going to put up points in this game. Then on defense, both teams are, in the 20s when it comes to the pass. The Saints defense is 25th against the pass, giving up an average of 252.3 passing yards per game, and the Chiefs defense is 22nd, giving up an average of 235. And then both teams neck and neck in against the run. Chiefs are giving up an average of 99 rushing yards per game. Saints are giving up an average of 96.5 rushing yards per game, and they're both defenses. Saints defense is 7th in points allowed. Chiefs defense is 8th. So these are two solid units going at it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Again, Mahomes has thrown some bad interceptions, and Derek Carr, he's a guy that turns the ball over as well. So I could definitely see that happening tonight. Who's going to be the guy that steps up coming out of the backfield for the Chiefs? It looks like Kareem Hunt's going to be the lead back. At over 60 yards rushing and a touchdown. So I guess they're going to lean on him at times. You got Samaje Perine, that could be that change of pace back. Carson Steele, we'll see what kind of workload he gets tonight after the fumble last week. For the Saints, get the ball to your playmakers. Get Alvin Kamara involved. He's going to be a factor. There's no Taysom Hill in this game, which, that takes away a dimension of this offense. But yeah, hit guys like Olave And Rashid Shaheed, they're probably going to try to go deep to him a lot. So, the Chiefs are going to try to take that away, I'm assuming. But yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting. The Saints, they are not the team that started off 2-0, and I don't think they're the team that's lost these last two games, to the Eagles and to the Falcons. They're somewhere in between that. I do think this team could finish around 8 or 9 wins. That's what I think I had them at. When I did the schedule predictions. So, but this game here, I still see the Chiefs winning. Just because they do, for some reason, they just find ways to win games, even if they're ugly, wins. And I expect that to be the case here tonight. Now, when you look at the pass catchers, Rashee Rice, he's going to be getting surgery on his knee. Or a procedure done on his knee. So we'll see, what the timetable is if he actually does end up coming back at some point, because they didn't rule him out for the season. We all assumed it was an ACL and he was done for the year, but maybe he's not. Maybe at least for the regular season he's done. Maybe he can come back in the postseason. But who's going to step up? Kelsey had a better game, and I expect him to have a big game tonight. You got Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster's back, so you got to lean on him at times, because he was good for them in 2022. And he knows this offense. So, and he had a touchdown a couple weeks ago. So rely on him, Justin Watson, Sky Moore. These guys are going to have to step up. So, we'll see how it goes. But I got the Chiefs winning. I'm going to say it's, 28-24 is the final score. A little high scoring. I think the Saints hang around, at least cover the number. But that's just because I picked them. But knowing my luck, the Chiefs will probably win by a touchdown. Because that's just how the spread pool has gone this year. I changed 3 games yesterday. So I originally had the Ravens, the Bears, and what was the other team? There was another game I switched. I'm trying to remember. How do I not remember? I had the Ravens. I had the Bears. I switched those, and I also switched. Oh, that's what it was. The Commanders and the Browns, and I changed to the Browns. And you're probably sitting there going, "Why?" Well, I had all the favorites, and I was like, I got to do something, but I changed the wrong games because all of them ended up being wrong. Now the Bengals, they should have won, but they didn't. They blew it. But, so right now I'm at 5. I could have had 6, with the Steelers, but of course they blow it at the end. I've had a lot of since doing the spread pool, I've had so many bad beats. And it's just, I'm waiting on winning that week. And I don't think it's going to happen this year. But we'll see. But the other thing, too, is, this year especially, it's year to year, or week to week. You really have no idea. It's like so many upsets every week. It's so hard to figure it out. But that's where we're at. So, and I got the Saints with the points, but I say the Chiefs still end up winning this game. We'll see what happens. I think it'll be a competitive game, but the Chiefs, I think, ultimately get this one here. So let me know what you guys think, though, about that. Who do you have winning this game? Let me know in the comments. So that is pretty much it for the show for today. I thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Give the other shows some love, like I always say. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like on the video, and a comment. I'll try to get to them and respond. But yeah, appreciate you guys tuning in. And yeah, make sure to enjoy the game tonight. And yeah, so as always, I am your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. Like I said, enjoy the game tonight, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.